Okay, we are live. Hello, everybody. We are entering live. Let's just make sure we have everybody connected and going. Yes. Hello, I am Matthew Emery McLean, and there is Julie Ann, excuse me, Guthrie right next to me, and all of these wonderful guests. We have Christy Holt, Alan Simberg, Janine, I can't even pronounce your last name. I apologize. I'll let you do it. We have Brigitte, and we also have Alli. So, and Dada, thank you very much, Dada. We are here talking about what the bleep is spirituality for this first episode. Yay! Oh, I'm so happy we get to be here for this conversation. We're going to ask that all of the people viewing, go ahead, you can comment on as we go, and we are going to try and pick out those questions so that we can bring them into this later conversation. But for right now, we're going to go ahead and I am going to allow Julie to introduce herself, and then we're going to give the panelists some time to introduce themselves and jump into our questions, or into our what the bleep is spirituality. Go ahead, Julie.
Well, thank you, Matthew, for going on this journey with me for the last year in planning this. And it's been a learning and growing experience to do this. And, we have good intentions about this series that we put together. It's an 8-part series. I think there's a bigger thing that we're addressing here, and that's being able to come to the table and have discussions and respect one another. And that's huge in this day and age. And I appreciate everyone that's come to the table to share their stories.
Yes. I say thank you so much. Yes, this journey has been amazing, very universally guided. There has been a lot of how do we connect in all of these areas of our lives? How do we get people from all walks of life to join this conversation? And in that, Julie and I both did have to go through all of those beautiful creation struggles to get this to fruition. And I love that journey, which is exactly why we're here, because so many of us, when's the last time you talked to somebody about spirituality that was across the aisle, in which you had to bridge that gap of communication? That's a good one to know. So anyway, I am Matthew Emery McLean, the Shamanic Happiness Coach, stationed here in Sierra Sunrise Wellness Center. It's so beautiful to be here. So thank you so much for this beautiful journey. Julie, I'll let you introduce the panelists. Take it away.
I'm going to let you do self-introduction. So we'll start with Christy. I think we'll just follow the screen down and turn this around.
All right. Well, good morning. I am Christy Holt, and I am from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. I am a happiness coach, and my biggest passion is working with moms. I really have a passion to empower moms and women, and really anybody who will listen. I want to just lift them up and help them to go from stuck and overwhelmed to feeling more confident, more balanced, and realizing that they are the creator of their own life, and that anything that they really truly desire is in fact possible if they set their mind to it. And I'm super excited to be here. I don't know if you're wanting to get into the spiritual background or just a really quick intro yet, Julie. What do you guys?
Let's just do your intro, and I think your spiritual background, you'll be able to talk about it within the context of what is your version of spirituality.
Okay.
Cool. Well, let's go on the next down to Brigitte.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Brigitte Lessard-Deyell, and I am from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, where everything is absolutely frozen solid for weeks now. And my calling in life is storytelling. Not necessarily my storytelling, but helping other people share their stories. I kind of fell into it, and it's I just absolutely love it. And I like in-person storytelling. So the past couple of years have been a little rocky, to say the least. But hopefully we are going to start gathering again and sharing stories, because it's absolutely life-changing.
Thank you, Brigitte.
Good morning. Can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Um, my name is Janine Brisebois, and I am living currently in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and staying warm as well is a fun challenge. Uh, my life has been many threads of constant learning and growing and experiencing elements of other people's individualities and um, the manner in which they cope in life. And that has brought me to the work that I do today, which is a trauma release expert, releasing trauma from our nervous system and bringing our brain back to the normal place it needs to be. And I'm also a grief recovery specialist. So I work online and universally. And thank you so much for having us here today. So appreciate you two for putting this together. It has been, I'm sure, an incredible journey, and I am truly grateful for the work that you have put in.
It's our pleasure. Thank you for being here. Okay, Alan.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Alan Simberg, and I'm living in Houston, Texas. And you might notice that I don't sound like I'm a native Houstonian, which I'm not. I'm originally from the East Coast, no surprise, New Jersey, in case everybody's going to say New York. And my passion is to work with people that have mental health challenges, relationship challenges, and also drug and alcohol challenges. I always use a holistic approach because I believe in the idea that the strength of a chain depends on its individual links. And if there's a link that's much weaker than any of the others, somehow the goals that people have cannot be fully achieved. And that's basically what I'm about for now.
Thank you so much. I love it. Alli.
Hello, everyone. I'm Alli MacKenzie. I wear a couple of different hats. I am a mom mentor, a spiritual teacher. I'm a Reiki master, so I teach those who are looking to practice this modality in their lives. I'm also a published author of a couple of spiritual children's books, and I'm a team member of Renewed Resilience here in Leduc, Alberta, Canada. And then most importantly, I'm a mom to a beautiful 4-year-old little boy. I'm really, very, very passionate about assisting moms in their journey of really finding themselves again and really connecting with their soul level selves, because I feel like through motherhood, we go through this, major transition, and we're sort of just expected to know what we're doing and figure it all out just like that, when really there's, so many different layers to that. So, really just about assisting women through their journey of motherhood and really figuring out what their gifts are, who they are again, and how to really come back to the world feeling strong and confident. So that's really where my passion lies.
Awesome. I can relate to that. And Dada, the monk dude.
Oh, we can't hear you.
I do that. Hi, thanks so much for inviting me. I'm not quite sure how you found me, but I'm glad you did. And I feel like I've been kidnapped by Canadians, which is good because it's a relief. Because I live in California, so go figure. I'm actually from New Zealand, but I've lived in California for 14 years. I'm a monk. I'm not making that part up. I've been a monk for 42 years or something. And I teach meditation and yoga and kind of how to lead a purposeful life. That's what I focused on. I work a lot with corporations these days. I'm also a musician, comedy writer. I have a secret life as a comedy fantasy author, which I don't want it to be secret, it's just that nobody's heard of me. That's what I do. So yeah, I help. What I really like to do is help executives connect to the source of love within themselves. But I have to do it surreptitiously because they don't usually consciously look for that. But that's what I'm doing, really.
Fantastic. Thank you. Matthew, did you have anything to add before we get started?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, everybody, again for showing up. I love the diversity on our panel. It is no surprise that everybody is here to talk about spirituality, given all of our backgrounds. And in this, I feel like I am only being called to jump in and kind of elevate what everybody here is saying on this conversation. To give context to some of those things. And I guess I want to say just thank you for all of our viewers for tuning in. We really are in this space of connecting those who have never had this conversation before. What is it like to be spiritual? Maybe you have a different understanding of it. We want to open this up so that when, the next time you are inspired to connect into this world, you're doing it from that place of inspiration that comes from the heart, not from like a space of being upset or a space of feeling like you're a victim or anything of that nature. This is a space where we can come together and feel empowered in this collective conversation. And so I just want to say thank you so much for that. So many of you have beautiful modalities, and I just want to sit here and talk to each one of you separately and just let's go on a coffee date and stuff like that. Obviously, Canada is a little bit different. That's a long way. That's 1,700 miles from me or something like that. So that's a long coffee date, but whatever, we'll make it happen eventually. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. I'm just super grateful to be here. I can feel the connection happening. So yeah, share this with anybody that you find can benefit from this conversation or might want to comment and continue the conversation in a very productive manner. Go ahead, Julie. Do you have anything to add before we get
I really don't. I think it's time to start with Christy's, which she's muted.
Forgive me. Yes.
I needed to cough quickly first.
That is good. Christy, before we go, I want to say this because we will be here having this great conversation. You might see some of our cameras turn off or mute or things like that. We are here as people and human beings just like you, so we have facilities that we also have to take care of. So please, we might need a breathe break or a refreshment break kind of a thing, whatever that might be. So please feel free to do that with us. And just we're all human here, so yeah, let's just have a good time. Thank you, Christy. Go ahead.
All right, so am I kicking things off now with what the bleep is spirituality? That's my thoughts on that. Okay, awesome. I've really been excited all week to share, and I literally didn't prepare a single thing. I just really wanted to just share from my heart whatever I feel inspired to share as the conversation goes around, and I'm so excited to bounce ideas off of everyone else on this panel. A brief background, I guess, about myself, just so y'all know where I've kind of come from and where I'm at, I guess, right now. I think it's a journey. It's always a journey. It starts in one place, and who knows, honestly, where it's going to end. But I was raised in a mostly Christian-ish home. My parents honestly didn't go to church, but I had some grandparents that did, and they sort of put me onto Christianity. There was something about it that definitely connected with me. And so, in fact, I found myself as a child asking my parents, who did not go to church, to take me to Sunday school. So I did go to Sunday school. I went to a Christian summer camp for a number of years. For me, I think the biggest thing that I wanted to share is that while there was definitely a piece of that I felt very connected to, there was also a lot of religion, organized religion pieces that I did not feel terribly connected to. Some of the rules and the rules, all of the sort of pieces that were like, do as I say, that I felt actually contradicted the entire premise of the Bible, which was to love one another. And I just really felt that I had a problem really believing in a creator that was harsh or not fully loving and accepting of those that he created. And I strongly believe that everyone is extremely unique. We are all put here with our own vision, our own words, our own unique soul or spirit. And to me, at this point, having gone through a number of things in my adult life, I have created a bit of distance for myself from the church, but not from my spirituality. I think that I've just really actually taken a deeper dive into spirituality. It's not religion, it's not defined by any one thing, it's more of an exploration of all things spiritual for me. And just what resonates most. And I think I'm a pretty open person, and I absolutely adore talking to people who have different viewpoints and exploring different religious understandings and different spiritual practices. I am so here for all of that, because I think there's so much to be learned from all the different people and the different perspectives. And, you know, like I say, it's a journey, and I love being able to explore different things and see how they fit, or maybe sometimes don't fit into my own journey at this point. Who knows later down the road what might be inspiring. So I just want to, I guess, just really encourage anyone watching that if you're feeling like there's a certain definition or a box of spirituality, or you're feeling like, oh, that's too, I don't know, woo, or too spiritual or too weird, or any of these things, just let go of those kind of thoughts and just be open. It doesn't have to be for you right now, but it's so inspiring to see where different people are at, and you never know what you might learn from them. So thanks so much for including me in this panel. I'm really excited to hear from everybody else as well.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Christy. Yeah, let's just keep it moving on. There's a lot that I already want to comment a lot, but I'm going to hold. We're going to hold and just let everybody to get through it. And then I'm taking notes and we're going to go. Yes. So go ahead.
So did you want me to go now?
Yes, please. Go
Wonderful.
ahead.
Thank you. My relationship with spirituality has been a very interesting one, to say the least. I started my life as a French-speaking only Canadian, just south of Montreal. And at the age of 17, my dad picked up our family. This was in 1982. You can do the calculation. You'll know how old I am. In 1982, my dad picked the whole family up and moved us to Fort McMurray. Now, if you don't know Canada, Fort McMurray is very close to the North Pole. And it is an oil-based city. Yeah, I guess it was a city back then even. And not one person spoke a word of English. Now, like any good French Canadian, I grew up Roman Catholic. That was pretty much the only options in Quebec. Everybody is Catholic. It's just they ran the church, they ran the hospitals, they ran a lot of the politics, they ran the school. Like everything is Catholic in Quebec. And then I'm plopped in a different part of the world where there are some Catholics, but there is all these other options. And then a year later, at the age of 18, I realized that I'm gay. And that was like, whoa, because according to my religion, I was an abomination. Going back to visit my grandmother, whom I absolutely adored, was just so hard because she was extremely Catholic. Went to church every single day of her life, many times, twice a day. So now, this person that I love so much, and she loves me, but the religion says that I am going to hell pretty much. And that really sent me on a tailspin of, religion is not very nice. Religion can be really nice, should be really nice, but there's a lot of hatred. And for whatever reason, I'm not sure, religion and spirituality was all the same to me. Probably because, well, there was only Catholic religion when I grew up. And it really I completely shut down, and for 30 years lived in my masculine energy, would absolutely have nothing to do with all this woo-woo stuff. It was like pretty crazy, and certainly not going to church. And when I started my company called Women Talk, which is a stage where women would share their stories, this really magical thing started to happen. This calling was bringing very spiritual women into my world. And I would be like, oh my God, you people are so woo woo. Like, what is that? When you're totally in your masculine energy, it's like these people are weird, but yet very attracted to it because there's something about it. One day I came across Monique McDonald, who teaches sacred gifts. And that just blew me open. And because it had, somewhat logic, a lot of logical part to it, but also very spiritual. And I was like, oh, like, okay, that was my bridge to kind of bring me to that side a little bit. And ever since then, my mind really opened up to all the possibilities out there. And I believe that story sharing is spiritual. It has changed hundreds of lives in my world. And it's just one little tiny part of spirituality. And if I have an advice to give, just like was already said, is to keep your mind open. Just stay open to the possibility. Even if you think it's too woo woo for you and you just don't get curious, because I think curiosity is so powerful, and one day it might open the most unbelievable door to a deep, deep happiness. So I'm still learning, and I'm very happy to be part of this group.
Yay, thank you so much. Let's just continue right along.
Okay. So my background is also French Catholic, and my experience of Catholicism has been very different than Bridget's. I actually have delved into our faith in a way that has uncovered that spirituality is really about aliveness. And the word spirituality is short for spiritual theology, the study of growth in holiness. And one of the most profound things in the Bible that speaks to my heart is that Christ asked us to be like little children. And that doesn't mean to be childlike, but it means to be an openness to the awesomeness, to the mystery of the wonderment that we get to be a part of. And children are present. They're in the moment now. And when we're in the moment now, we have no fear. When we think about our future, that's when we have fear. When we bring up the past, that's when we prevent ourselves from being fully alive in the here and now. And so spirituality is how to focus and seek our mind on loving, on becoming holier, and on loving God, who has given us everything. And it's the gratitude of the impact of our lives and our uniqueness and our giftedness that each one of us has that we get to share with the others in an effort to allow each of us to grow forward and to become the best version of ourselves in love and in peace and without judgment. But we also must stand firm on what is right and what is true. And God is so incredibly massive that what we don't want to do is to make him of our own personal understanding, because he's so much more than what we can understand on our own. And that's why sharing with others and learning and being curious is the way to bring peace amongst all of us into our own growth and our own ability to share this this openly.
Mhm. I love that. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Beautiful. Okay. Alan.
Hello, everyone. What initially contributed to my current understanding of spirituality was being raised in the Jewish faith. And what I mean by that is that one of the things I noticed as I got older and older through my childhood was there was a lot of judgment connected to religion in terms of the way I was raised. And also there was a lot of contradiction. So one example of that is my parents would tell me, for example, go to synagogue. And either my mother would not go, or my father would go and stand outside 90% of the time talking to his friends who also went to synagogue. They actually went outside the synagogue. And the thing that was driving me for many, many, many years was fear of incurring the wrath of God. And one of the things that really was very difficult for me was I didn't even know what I would be doing that would cause that to happen. So for a good part of my upbringing, I was walking on eggshells, hoping that God wasn't going to punish me or strike me down in some way. And it actually got to the point where on one of the holidays, which is Passover, you're not supposed to eat any. Well, one of the guidelines is you're not supposed to eat anything that has yeast or leavening in it. And I had gone to an amusement park with a family member, and I had eaten something that it had, I don't remember if it was a hot dog or a pretzel or whatever. And then I went on a Ferris wheel, and it was a double Ferris wheel. So in other words, when one of the parts was lower, the other part was higher. Okay. So as everybody probably knows, if you have any understanding of Ferris wheels, is there's a certain amount of time the Ferris wheel runs, and then at a certain point it stops to let people off and get other people on. Well, as luck would have it, when I was on the Ferris wheel, one of the times it stopped, I was in the very top cart, and it started to shake. I immediately started to pray, and I asked God to please not kill me for eating the pretzel. And I can't even explain fully how grateful I was to have the opportunity to walk off that Ferris wheel and not to have been thrown off and crashed to my death. Then as I got older, another major event in my life that contributed more to my kind of leaning towards spirituality, or at least being curious about it. Now I lost my train of thought. I got so emotional about what I'm saying. Is that one day, I got it back. One day, I attended a church service, and the person who gave the sermon spoke against the Jews and condemned the Jews for killing Jesus Christ. And I thought, whoa, oh my goodness. Because I was older then, I was more mature then, so I had more reasoning. Then the next weekend, I went to a synagogue And the person who gave the sermon talked against the Catholics. And I thought to myself, well, wait a minute here. Wait, 2 weekends in a row, and in a sense, two very different religions talked against the opposite? Is that what religion is supposed to be about? And that encouraged me even more to pursue spirituality. And then what really opened up the gates for me was, it was kind of around the mid to late 90s. I got a tape of Carolyn Mace, and her last name is spelled M-Y-S-S, and she's a spiritual teacher, and she actually still teaches today. And I was fascinated by the things that she said. And one of the things that she did say, which has stuck with me to this day, is that there are two truths. There's a truth with a small t, and there's a truth with a capital T. The truth with the small t is the truth that we believe. The truth with the capital T is true whether we believe it or not. So a simple example of that is, somebody may believe that if they hold a pen up in the air and if they let go of it, it will float. That's the small t. The T, the capital T, is if you hold the pen up in the air and you let go of it, it will drop. And the same thing is true about life. And the last thing that I'll say at this point is what I believe to be the foundation of spirituality is love. It's thinking love and being love, because thought without behavior doesn't really mean that much. And my belief is that spirituality is the foundation of all organized religions. And sometimes, very often actually, people get introduced into organized religion having the opportunity to learn the underlying spiritual principles of all religion, which for me has been quite freeing. I still get nervous sometimes because there's no way to know if what I was taught was true. But what I have noticed is my life has gotten better and better when I think and I behave from the perspective of love rather than from the perspective of fear.
There's truth there. And thank you, Alan. Isn't that the truth? Oh, goodness. Alli.
Yes, yes. Oh, I'm loving what everybody is sharing today. It's yeah, I'm really enjoying this conversation. So, for myself, my story is similar to some of those which have been shared today already. So, even though I do have a beautiful spiritual practice right now, I kind of joke and say, for the longest time, I really was spiritually confused. We grew up Ukrainian Catholic, but we never really had any conversations about, who God was or what God did or how we could connect to God. I mean, we would go to church on some holidays, Thanksgiving or Christmas. But that was really it. There were no real conversations about that. And growing up, in my mind, I really looked at religion and spirituality as being synonymous with each other. I didn't quite get it. I didn't really think to ask the questions at that time. And I think I also maybe lacked some of the awareness as to what questions to ask. So, fast forward a number of years, my partner and I, we went through a pretty lengthy IVF journey, followed by a bit of a traumatic birthing experience, and then a gnarly bout of postpartum depression. And the combination of those three things really catapulted me into the spiritual world. And it cracked me open to myself, to my soul level self. And that really started to introduce me to things like Reiki therapy and the Akashic records. And I do believe that our introductions to spirituality can unfold in many different ways, and infinite ways, really. And however it does choose to show up in your life is exactly how your soul chose for that experience to be. So when your introduction does happen, whether it's a cracking open like I experienced, or it's more of a gentle nudge, it really is this beginning of this journey of self. It's this practice of divine introspection and, deep-seated realization that spirituality really is what you make it. And, you start to shift from this concern of, external influences to more of this, like, turning down that noise and then using that energy to nurture yourself within. So you really start to enter this new state of awareness when you start practicing spirituality. Now, when I first started practicing, I kind of joke too, because it was as though I had like walked out of this zombie line. Okay. And when I looked back to this line, everyone's eyes closed, walking, following one another, not really aware. And it felt kind of scary at first. I found myself thinking, like, where's everyone else who's awake like me? Where are all these other people? Now I feel like I'm by myself. So there's this like initial sort of like uncertainty. But the beauty of spirituality is that it really is all about energy. And when this does happen, when you start to kind of wake up to your life a little bit more, it's almost as though you automatically become this magnet for others who have also been awakened to their gifts. And you just organically start finding each other. You start finding your people. You start having these conversations. And you're introduced to this idea that you and everyone around you is all of a sudden connected to something more. Now, whether that be God, source, the divine, universal consciousness, whichever words resonate with you, it is this idea of something more. And I believe at the heart of any spiritual practice, it's really about being a kind human. It's, about visiting our hearts a little bit more. And I call it leading with love. We start to create this loving ripple effect where we then assist others and also practicing the same level of kindness, but while also embracing their unique gifts along the way. So, be human, be kind, be both. But on top of that, I do believe that we are even more than that. We're multidimensional, we're intuitive beings guided by our souls. And everyone on the planet, all of us, everyone on the panel, everyone tuning in today, we all have this innate ability to tune into our own frequency and then actually turn the dial to those channels that we feel curious or called to explore. So when we start doing that again, when we start actually believing in ourselves wholeheartedly, believing in our infinite potential, that's when the magic happens. And up until that point, the universe will deliver us with what it can to get our attention, but it will never interfere with our free will because that is our God-given gift. So when we're kind, when we believe in ourselves, when we start to pair that with our intention, we start to really honor our roles as co-creators, and not just in our lives, but in the lives of those that we connect with. When we're having these spiritual conversations, that's when we truly become unstoppable in our spiritual pursuits. And, just as our souls are in a constant state of growth and evolution, our spiritual practices really are the same, that new layers present themselves and other pieces might fade away, and that's okay. So, you might even find yourself at some point saying, I don't even know what I know anymore. The more that we learn, the more that we start to feel curious and explore, we almost go through this point where it's like our body needs to catch up to all of those energetic changes that we've experienced. But, feeling curious about spirituality, really is one of those keys to, like a lot of us have said today, opening up your minds to something more. And, to really be gentle with yourself along the way and really have fun with the process. because there really are no rules. When it comes to your personal practice, again, it really is what you make it and what you choose for it to be. So thank you again for being able to share.
Yes. Ooh. I love it. Oh, this is so juicy. All of these conversations. Oh, I love it. Okay. Oh, let's just keep going. Are you muted? Unmute.
Exactly right. Yes, I was. Yeah, thanks everybody for all of that. Kind of now I've got to think of something different to say, because I would have said many of those things if I'd thought of them. Which there seems to be some common ground around, this difference between religion and spirituality, or what's the relationship between them, and that's certainly something I went through. My father was an atheist. My mother was a Quaker. And we grew up in New Zealand, or I grew up in New Zealand. They were from England. And so I decided I was an atheist when I was 12. So now I'm a recovering atheist. So I'm confused, in other words. So really growing up, I had two religions, more or less. One was being a pacifist activist, because my mother was a former communist, became Quaker. My father fought in the Second World War, suffered, post-traumatic, battlefield stress, and became a pacifist. And so I went on my first anti-war march when I was 4. That was a great education, really, seriously. And then, but really my religion was Lord of the Rings. I read it when I was 11, and looking back, I read it every year for the next, 20 years. I'm a complete Lord of the Rings nerd. I do workshops on the inner meaning of Lord of the Rings. And looking back, I sort of, of course, Tolkien was a Catholic, so there we have some commonality. But there was so much in it that influenced my sort of foundational values. And, what I considered, who do I want to be? And what is, what is a meaningful life? What is the role of loyalty and courage and all these things? So it was a tremendous spiritual education. And so I'm not sure if that was what Tolkien intended, but that's certainly what it did for me. Anyway, I went on, and when I was still pretty young, I was 19 in university. I was in my atheist phase. I took a modest amount of LSD, and it was actually called. They had brand names. I'm sure none of you have done anything like this, but just to educate you a little, they had brand names, and this one was called California Sunshine. And I've ended up in California for 14 years, and I love it, though I love making fun of the Californians. That's part of the joy. They do give you plenty of ammunition, because I have a fairly sensitive BS sort of antenna, and there's quite a bit of it in California. There's a lot of confusion and a lot of brilliant, wonderful people. I like making fun of psychics, fake psychics. There's some real psychics, but I met some fake ones. And my favorites are the ones who predict the end of the world and put a date on it. And then, that we passed the date, and I'm now the survivor of 7 end of the worlds. I think it's good for my health. So I have a bit of fun with. So I think there's a lot of confusion between psychic abilities, which I think is sometimes real, but mostly delusional, and spirituality. And my guru in India, I'm a bit of a traditionalist, to be honest. I went to India, ran away from New Zealand, went to India, studied under this amazing guru, and studied all these spiritual philosophies and for years, and Sanskrit scriptures and all of that. It was amazing. And one of the stories I love about him. So somebody was with him, and they were asking him, how do we measure spiritual progress? And then they were asking, is it something to do, if I have these psychic powers, if I can read minds or have some sort of intuition or telepathy or can heal people or something. And the Guru said, these kind of powers have nothing to do with spirituality. He said, the only measure of spirituality is the periphery of your love. And for me, that summed up spirituality pretty much better than anything else I'd heard. So I think it's about expanding the sphere that includes the people, the animals, the things, the rocks that we love. And it's got to be accompanied by action. So I love what you had to say about that, Alan. And so I'm very much, I think it's very important to have a sort of balance between the internal practice of, finding our connection to the divine and developing that, and acting on that by serving others and helping other people find happiness and free them of suffering. So that's kind of what I think spirituality is about at this particular stage in my journey of confusion.
Oh my goodness. I think that is just so beautiful. Everybody, all these different stories, we can now tell just from these 6 different stories that there are many aspects to spirituality. There's also like many stories that just come along with how did I get introduced to spirituality? I love everybody's stories, and it's fun to hear how everybody kind of got introduced or where they originate their story. And I love it because I have the perspective that I was not raised around a lot of organized religion. I also wasn't really instructed, so to speak, on what spirituality would be in the metaphysical sense, even though my mom's a hippie and stuff like that. So a lot of the stories of the past are very extremely funny, and it is nice to bring in like humor into like how can we go back and forth on these things. So within my journey, I find it interesting reflecting, and I look at the different parts from when I was, how old was I? It was in 4th grade. My grandfather passed, and I watched his spirit walk down the hall and out the door. So as we talk about like these things that happen to us, like my introduction of spirituality is very different, and I'm seeing different things. Like my world is different than other people, and how do I connect in that way? So it was powerful in there, and then just the universe guiding me along the way. A few of us have energetic modalities, and so I was introduced to a modality at 13, another one at 18, and all of those things just continue to project the trajectory of our lives, and I feel like that's such a powerful existence to have. And then eventually we end up here, and we've gone through these struggles, and we kind of have a little bit of context to, thank you, to the confusion of this experience that we're having, right? This collective confusion or collective decision that we're part of. So yeah, like Julie, what was yours? Where did you get? What was your introduction?
Oh, well, I was introduced to church and Christianity at a young age, and I had experiences prior to that with, seeing or feeling spirits. And, that's pretty confusing when you're 6 years old and you don't know what you just experienced, and nobody, you don't want to tell anybody because like it's really weird. And so, I kind of suppressed my gifts for a long time in my life. And I had a personal relationship with God. And, I had a crisis experience and about 5 years ago, and which put me on the path to be more dedicated to this path and helping other people. So here we are. This is what we're doing.
Yes.
It's still, it's still a journey. It's, it's still a lot of learning, growing, and it's really true that the one thing that runs through everything in this is love. I don't care what religion you are. It's, the foundation should and always be love for yourself and others. That's what I have to add. So I think we're probably, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Matthew.
Well, I kind of, I want to, well, I don't have a lot to add to that. I feel like I don't have, excuse me, I don't have a lot to continue on to your story, just honoring your story and saying thank you. What I feel is to second that it seems like the collective decision is that spirituality is love. And it's our journey toward love in some fashion. It's our journey toward loving the self. It's our journey toward loving others. It's our journey toward loving our environment and the connections that we have. It's our journey toward our own personal journey for whatever reason of struggle we have with love or something. That journey that progresses us through that seems to be what we're describing as spirituality, because as we've noticed, most of us have had some type of, we could say, like awakening. We've all talked about some type of gift. We've all talked about like what is spiritual consciousness. We've all talked about like what the shadow. We've talked about everything that we are going to have future episodes on. So in some aspect, there is this part where, wow, this is the beginning, the takeoff of what we're doing here. So how can we, if we were to be in this space, how could we educate somebody who's fresh into this world about what spirituality is? I feel like that question kind of comes into where it's like, well, as a kid, I never got that introduction of this is what spirituality is. Instead, I was shown many aspects of religion and other things too. So like my first experience was going to a Lutheran church, and that was just fabulous. Just a totally different experience. And then I was exposed to Catholicism a little bit, and then I was exposed to Buddhism and Hinduism, and then indigenous belief systems and things like that. So it's like, well, where do we start with, if we're going to try to have this conversation? How do you break that wall down to be like, what is your idea of spirituality? How is your lens of spirituality for you in your life? So I kind of wanted to open that question up maybe, and then go from there. Is how would you introduce somebody into that conversation so that they're free of, or excuse me, so that they're motivated to have that conversation in a proactive space rather than like a defensive space?
For me, one of the things that I feel very strongly about is that we don't need to all be the same. We don't need to all have the same belief, because I feel we're in a world right now where everybody's trying to convince everybody to be like them. And it's insanity. Like, do we all want to be roses? That would get boring. Like, it's nice to have the really big diversity, and to not only not want everybody to be like you and believe the same as you, but always be curious. You don't have to like it. You don't have to believe it. But you do have to respect it and stay curious about it. I think that, to me, that's the number one thing. And then that's when possibilities that maybe you'll find your thing that is really going to connect with you.
Yeah, I feel very much like any sort of specific path just feels restrictive, when I think there's a common thread, something that we can pull that is actually consistent amongst all of the different, areas of spirituality, which is that love, which is that being present, being, in the moment and experiencing. And I even think science supports all of this too. And I think that anyone that is suggesting that spirituality is separate from science is not looking at the big picture. I think it is all cohesive and it all connects together. If you search for those common pieces that aren't about humanity interjecting their view into the spiritual component, just the natural spiritual perspectives on their own.
Okay, and my thoughts about your question, Matthew, are that depending on the age of the person, I think one way to initiate a conversation is either, if the person has the maturity, ask what their idea is of spirituality. Maybe encourage them, if they have no idea, maybe encourage them to research it a little bit and then come back and have another conversation. If we're talking about a young child, you could introduce spirituality just by talking about certain ideas, and you don't necessarily have to categorize it as a conversation about spirituality to start with. And, part of what I believe, and we're all saying this actually in one way or another, is that the foundation of spirituality is love. So I think if people can understand what that truly means, because sometimes when we hear the word love, we think of mush, and we think of romance, and we think of kissing, but love, to my way of thinking, is giving from the heart, and giving without expecting to receive anything. It's just doing it for the sake of doing it, to add to someone's life. So if we talk to people in terms of initiating the idea of spirituality, I think if we talk about those ideas and help to encourage it, and of course, one of the things I learned from my background is not only talk about it, but model it. Don't say, be loving and then be like really harsh and judgmental. So that's my thoughts about your question, Matthew.
I love that, and it brings in. I wanted to bring in when I learned when I got my master certification and experience with Karuna Reiki at 18. I had no idea. I mean, I had an idea of what I was doing, right? But there is that context of like, well, what's happening? And when I realized what the Karuna meant for this, it meant compassion in action. And so I look at that and I was like, oh yeah, I want to go do a whole bunch of fun stuff in my life, as far as I want to be a zoologist and help save the animals and do all these other fun, like I want to be in this world and help to uplift and bring out the love and the connection. And then it's powerful to realize that we have to start internally with that conversation. And then how do we invite that in? So how do we bridge that love gap? It kind of seems like, and along that process, when I was in that Karuna teaching, and then I go forward and I'm like using Karuna Reiki, and I'm kind of being a little bit cavalier with it, but I'm you can do no wrong with Reiki, but in the aspect of how does this healing affect my life? There's a little cavalierness of like, oh yeah, I'm going to go gung-ho into this type of thing. And it turns out it looked like I started organizing world peace meditations. I changed careers. I could not continue going into a field that was going to keep me more boxed in. So it's interesting how when I initiated in the actual Karuna, the compassion in action, I began a life, or I pivoted my life in a unknown way, just because of that initiation, so to speak. So this powerful collective initiation is powerful. Yeah. Beautiful. Mm-hmm. Did anybody else? I didn't want to cut anybody off. That was just so powerful. Yes. Does anybody else want to contribute to that question?
Yeah, I had a thought about, stories. Brigitte is very much into stories. I love stories, and if you may be familiar with Johan Harari's work on from *Sapiens*, this famous book, and he talks a lot about how storytelling is actually integral to the development of civilization. And he in his book *Sapiens*, he traces human history from 70,000 years ago to now, and stories is kind of almost a common thread that runs through it all and enables us to imagine things that don't exist, and then we create them, like cities and money and all this stuff that we build. We imagine it first. So in terms of introducing anyone to spiritual ideas, I think stories are probably they're probably the second most effective method. I would say the most effective is, as Alan said, modeling it. Because there's nothing that puts, an alert person off more than seeing someone talk about, being universal and loving everyone and contradicting that in their behavior. That's more likely to push you away from what they apparently represent than attract you to it. So I think modeling is number one. The other thing, what I do actually I teach a lot of atheists, And luckily I've had that experience. So, I work in tech. I teach meditation and creative thinking in tech companies. And I don't talk about spirituality at all, not overtly, because they don't want that. They want to solve their problems. They want to solve the problem of too much thinking, not getting their mind clear, so they can't make good decisions and get these sort of intuitive insights. So that's the kind of world I'm in. But what I do with them, I make them sing. And which would sound weird, but they've already brought in the guy in orange robe, so it's already weird. So they sort of, the singing is like a small step. Nobody bothers, and they love it. It's just what they need, because they're, full of super smart people. The room's always got people. Everyone there's better educated than me, but they need this sort of emotional connection that you get through chanting. I get them to sing a Sanskrit mantra and meditate, and they're shocked by how different they feel after just 10 minutes of this. So I think actual practice of something simple and approachable, framed in a non-religious way if needed, just to get people to actually try it and have a way of turning their mind inward and connecting to themselves, that can help a lot, I think.
I just wanted to add too, I think that asking questions of people so that they can discover and go through that journey of discovering what pieces are important to them on their own is actually far more effective than attempting to even, suggest what is out there, but having them actually seek it out on their own, in their own unique way.
Yeah, and I think, to add to all this, even bringing it back to the vibration of love, is even looking at it from this perspective of self-love, from, a selfless way of being. I think often we kind of get excited and overly motivated and want to do all the things for everyone else, but we can really only love others as much as we love ourselves. So if we're sort of bypassing that part of the process, we're only going to get so far, right? Or we will, and then the universe will give us all these other little obstacles to sort of reroute again. But even with my son, he's 4, and kind of like what Dr. Allen said too, is that modeling component of I can try to teach my son to love himself all he wants, but then if I'm also standing there talking negatively about myself or beating myself up, he's going to absorb that like a sponge. So really practicing what we preach, of course, but also just bringing it back to self, because I think sometimes, there's this facade of feeling guilty about doing things for ourselves, especially in motherhood. But, taking care of ourselves doesn't mean that we are taking care of other people. And the more that we understand self-love, the more that we love ourselves wholeheartedly, the more that we will share that with the world. So I think that's an important piece.
Matthew, did you want to ask a question?
Oh, I just love this. I guess there's so much, and I kind of want to bring in like a discussion. So how, to bring in all of us to kind of work off of each other. And the question that comes into my mind right now, as we're talking about allowing people to show up when they're ready, it seems, and that there's many different avenues. So you don't have to talk about it as like spiritual or religion, right? We can do this as a modeling of behavior, of love. And so sometimes we might get to that, well, what does it look like? How do I actually show that? How do I know that that's what I'm modeling for whoever I'm trying to influence or be in this co-creation for? How can I be of support with somebody else who's also trying to model the same behavior and or same moment? And the question comes into, what is courageous spiritualism, or how can we be courageous in our spirituality, in learning what does that mean through love? And so as we say, like when we get in the thick of it, and then we're modeling something that is when we're in our pain body, so to speak, and we're modeling something that we don't want to be modeling, right? We're suffering and we're sitting there going, this person did blah, 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 whatever happened. And that is something that we are just talked about. That's something that's like, oh, do we want our children or other people to be learning what spirituality is through that one experience? Or how can I elevate that experience to be a courageous example of spirituality instead? So how would I be able to be in myself so that I could not spread, we could say shadow, we're going to talk about shadow later, but how could I be in myself so that I can model spirituality on that, I guess, that conscious level courageously? Because sometimes we will go through those obstacles that make it very difficult for us to be in the moment.
I think that's a really great question. And I think there's a lot of power in pausing, right? I think we're so quick to emotionally react, and that's just part of being a human. We're social, emotional creatures. But when we pause for even just a few seconds, that allows us to really operate from that place of grace, right? And to practice compassion for ourselves and also the situation that we're experiencing, right? Because when we're emotionally reactive, we very much have those blinders on, and we're not really aware of like what contributed to the situation or what's making this experience what it is. We're very just sort of like me in that moment, right? But pausing allows us to really just open up those peripherals a little bit more, check in with ourselves with the situation, and then again really just come from that place of gracefulness where we can reconnect with love and truly, again, lead with love, allowing ourselves to be the conscious creators that we are versus just feeling as though we are maybe victimized by certain situations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's really courageous to have that radical self-acceptance, that radical extension of grace and compassion, to recognize our humanness, right? And say, even when we do get in that space and we react maybe in a way that we're not really proud of in the moment, just recognizing, right, I'm human and sometimes that happens, but we can move forward. We can give ourselves that grace. And if we can practice giving ourselves that grace and compassion, then we can start extending that to those around us as well and really set that example in that space.
Yeah, one of the things that's really helped me is I always get, again, that word curious. What's the story here? Like this person is flipping me the bird as I'm driving by and they're like so angry. And I'd be, okay, so I could get angry right back. But, I try to say, so what's the story behind here? Like, were they cut off before? Are they trying to rush to the hospital? Like, because there's always a story, even murderers, it's like, you can believe in the death penalty and wanting to do all this, but do you know their stories as to why they got where they are today? And when you think that way all the time, it really opens your eyes to possibilities, and you get better at trying to be kinder and nicer to people that it's difficult to be nice to.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Brigitte. I like that. And I want to, by the way, Gandalf had something very important to say about the death penalty. But anyway.
Sure, that's okay. Yeah, no, it's beautiful.
Well, no, really, and you have to read between the lines, but it's very clear, and it's one of the most classic moments in Lord of the Rings. Am I going to be crazy if I start talking about Lord of the Rings? I'll tell it briefly if I can. So, I don't know if you all even know the story. Many people do, but Frodo is asking why Bilbo didn't kill Gollum when he had the chance. And he's saying he deserved death. And Gandalf says, many deserve death who don't get it, but many die who deserve life. And do you have the power to give life? If you don't have the right to take life away.
Ooh, I love that. That's awesome.
That kind of, if you watch the passage in Fellowship of the Rings, Ian McClellan does it, and your hair, anyway, my hair stands on it, which is I've got long hair, so it's a lot. But I wanted to pick up on something Ali said as well, which was to do with facing your own, actually several of you referred to this, it's sort of accepting your own humanity or whatever. And so, okay, I'm trying to be more spiritual, but maybe I'm not. And so I actually invented a therapy, and it's to do with storytelling again. I wrote an essay about it. It's called Evil Villain Therapy. And what I do essentially is, if there's somebody whom I really don't like, I turn them into a villain in one of my stories. And then I, essentially I stick pins in them, like some TV stuff. But the outcome is more interesting. What I find is this improves the story, because villains are usually the most interesting characters in stories. Satan in Paradise Lost was far more fun than Jesus. It wasn't Milton's intent. It's just he's more colorful. He does more. So what I find is that this villain, this person I can't stand, has inspired me to make this fun story, and then I can't help beginning to love them, the real person. It's very strange, but it's that's how I deal with my psychoses through in as creative a way as I can. So I don't know if it would work for other mortals, but it helps me.
I love this. I love it. Man, there's so much wisdom. Yeah. How else can we, be courageously spiritual? I guess I give context. I remember one time when I was like, I'm going to be more spiritual, high school. And so awareness, I have a certain level of awareness that we can all take a grain of salt with. And I'm sitting here going, I want to be more connected to myself, right? And what does this path mean? And so I'm walking to work. And spirituality becomes like, this walk becomes spiritual to me because I'm being myself. I'm allowing myself to experience my mind and what's around me and my thoughts in that space of exploration. And in that spot, I was like, you know what? This walk is one of the most spiritual experiences I've ever had. And then I ground in, and of course, later on in life, we would define spiritual experiences as something else. And so to give context, we have so much language to be able to provide an automatic spiritual context to our existence and what we're going through. For those people who do not have a spiritual context to their understanding or the language for that, how can we make them feel comfortable, so to speak, in their own walk? Yeah. What practices or examples or guidance have you given people, or in your own journey? What would that be?
I know from my journey, again, a lady that created sacred gifts one day said to me, because we'd always be laughing how, it's so woo-woo and stuff. And one day she said to me, one day you're so into the logical and all that. And she said, one day you're going to be a bridge for people to their spirituality, because you are so far on that side and so are not into spirituality or know about it or understand it, that once you do, you will be that bridge. And that really triggered me. It's like, oh, okay. Just little stuff like that sometimes can make a huge difference in people's lives.
For me, I think meditation has been huge for me. And it's been a process of getting out of my thoughts, releasing those thoughts, a practice of becoming free from all of the thinking that pops in there, and realizing that I don't have to let that thinking take my brain space, to almost mentally go outside of my body. And I know that sounds really weird, but I don't mean it in a weird way. I just mean letting go of all of the emotional, I think Matthew mentioned the pain body, the emotional connection, the bodily sensations, the logical thinking, and just releasing all of that has allowed me to really get far more practice at being present, releasing the anxious future worries, and letting go of the stories and the beliefs and the feelings, the emotions from past experience. Has just given me the ability to actually be present, to see what is going on around me with a more neutral objective lens and really be able to fully experience that on a deeper level. And I think too, part of what actually takes me on a spiritual journey is adventure, exploring what lights up my heart. I love hiking in the mountains. Oh my gosh, I just got back from the beach and the ocean. Oh my gosh, it just gives me life. I don't know why I live here. It's minus 40-ish with the wind chill, and I'm looking out the window. There's like this much snow on my neighbor's makeshift shed out here. I don't know why I live here, but going and seeking those adventures, those experiences that actually just bring your soul alive are like, that's what I tell people. Go adventure, find the things that light you up and follow that.
Inspiration by all sorts of stuff and things and beliefs and
I just remembered something I once did was a bit unusual. So I was pretty new at being a monk and a meditation teacher. I was in Australia, and one of my students, very, very nice young man, but he had a bit of a problem. He was outwardly very successful. He had just qualified as a doctor. He had a great job. He had friends. He had, obviously a great career and everything. But he was always complaining to me about how unhappy he was. And he was meditating. So I taught him meditation. He's meditating regularly. He's doing yoga, and it was it kind of wasn't working. And this almost never happened. And at some point, he was telling me again how sorry he feels for himself. And I kind of reacted, not really, I just sort of suddenly burst and I said, look, your problem is that you're always thinking about yourself. And why don't you go and find some people who've got real problems and help them and get some perspective, wake up to yourself. And I'm normally very polite. My mother was English upper class lady, and she trained me to be more polite than that, but this is unusual. Anyway, he took it very much to heart. And a couple of weeks later, he came back and said, Dada, I've arranged to go to India for 6 months and volunteer as a medical practitioner in a small village. And I thought, oh my God, I should be careful what I say. This guy took me very seriously. But I was happy, of course, and he went and did it. He came back 6 months later, and I tell you, his face had changed. He looked so much more free. And he told me, he said, that a big thing that what happened, I went there and I had this idea that I'm the great white hero going to help all these poor ignorant people and save them. And he said, after a while, I realized they're the ones helping me. And I'm the main beneficiary of this whole process. And he came back and it helped him so much because he was selfish. He was self-centered. And I think that's actually the problem that a lot of people have. And that's why I always emphasize to people that I teach, look, just doing your meditation or, developing your connection with your inner self and all that, that's only half the story. You need to find a way to express whatever you've been given by God's grace to help other people. That's a full spiritual life for me. And in his case, it was very clear. It was great. Sometimes it's something a little different that you accidentally say the right thing.
Oh, I love that. That speaks into so many things. And it's like, it's like, how can we get out of our own way in a way? And like to find that happiness, but also what I'm hearing from us, it seems like when we feel disconnected, when we feel lonely, when we feel out of inspiration or motivation or purpose, we perhaps are lacking an experience with our spiritual self and how that fits into the world around us. I'm kind of like hearing that conversation. How do we feel? Yeah.
Yeah, I love the idea that being inspired brings you closer to spirituality. I think they're very close. I once jumped out of a plane and I was extremely inspired and full of spirituality once I hit the ground. But
You're
you know,
here, the parachute was open to just
Give
fine.
yourself
Few
no.
cuss words on the way down.
oh, there was a few of those. You can actually read my lips.
Creative prayer. Yes.
But you know what though? Like I know I'm making fun here, but I do believe like you have to get out of your ordinary, everyday, boring crap to find inspiration, and then spirituality comes with it. I think it's huge. It's whether it's the ocean, jumping out of a plane, whatever, you're going on stage, like with having people share their stories. Like for some people, that is like the scariest thing they will ever do, to go in front of a microphone in front of people. And I'm very good at convincing people to do this. And it's my greatest joy in life to have somebody that's really shy, they're shaking, and they do it anyway. Like it's just incredible for me, because I know they're in a place now that, well, right at the time they might vomit, but later on it's so inspiring and it can change your life.
Yeah, you got to push that comfort zone a little bit in order to expand it and grow it and make it bigger and more all-encompassing.
Yeah. Like I don't know, I might be wrong, but I think it's hard to feel spirituality and find spirituality when you're bored.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I remember hearing, if you need to create, if you're trying to create something, go get bored, because then you're leaving room to only create. And so you have to go explore. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
Well, and I think, one piece too, when it comes to inspiration or getting downloads or ideas, right, is often we kind of, it's like the ego takes over and says like, well, I came up with this. This was me being creative. This is me being, inspired. But, where is that information coming from, right? And I feel like when we connect to the idea that we're all connected to source in some way, whatever that source might be for us, but when we are inspired, or when we do get those really great ideas, that we're plugging into source, right? So that has been like a major connecting factor for me, and even in the conversations that I have, that take us away from that feeling of being alone or feeling like we are doing this all by ourselves, right? We're all connecting to something, and that's where all of that amazingness comes from. So I find that really helps.
I love that. And it's interesting because when you talked about like tapping into source, or getting that flow state, or whatever you would say, I feel like there's valuable language in coming through that would say that I am embodying God, because God is working through me, right? I'm open enough to do that. And I'm going to use my American accent, my American accent, Janine. I wanted to get some perspective from you on this. I've seen you taking a couple of notes, and I just feel like there's some words that I'm like, well, I need to hear about this right now, like that aspect. Yeah.
Oh, I love being put on the spot. Thank you, Matthew. I have been taking a lot of notes and taking in a lot of what's going on, and the conversation here is very powerful, and it's very uniting, because being courageously spiritual, it's interesting that those two words are side by side, because should we not be spiritual? And in our spirituality, be courageous, because we are spiritual. And why does one have to describe the other? And love, the most powerful depth of force. In the Bible, it says this: love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. And always is a huge word. Because as humans, we never always do something. One thing that we can do is to create the habit of being grateful. And gratitude is a stepping stone to creating more spirituality. Imagine turning on your tap of water and being grateful that there's water coming out of the tap, and being grateful that there's hot water and cold water. We are in a very small population of the world that gets to experience that on a daily basis. Grateful for the small things and the small wonders that we get to step into every single day. God breathed into the first human our souls. And God experiences life vicariously through us. And so, what is the life that He's experiencing in our actions, in our thoughts, in the way in which we share love, in the way in which we pray? Prayer is the universal binding factor that reaches us whenever we feel the need, whether we're rejoicing or we're sad or we're frightened. It's one of the very simple ways of reaching out for help. And when we share the giftedness that we've been given, and we stand in that with enthusiasm and joy and expressiveness and live out loud, that is being courageously spiritual, rather than hiding behind the curtain of, well, I'm afraid of being judged. Because then we invite more judgment.
Mhm.
And I also think that it's very important that we decide for ourselves how we're going to move forward. And yes, others may see that as judgment, but it's a decision that we make in our choices. And at the end of the day, God said He's going to judge us. So let Him do that. And let's live life forward in curiosity of who are you? How does God's love show up in you as an individual? And how can we help each other become even more?
Thank you. Make sure I'm not muted. I'd like to know, you all have a good sense of humor. How do you bring that sense of humor into your spirituality? Because I think you got to have one, right?
I just wanted to add to what Janine said. It's just, I think our intended state is a spiritual state. We are created to be spiritual beings. So I think just circling back to the courageousness of it is because largely as humankind, we've drifted away from that. It's not the norm. It's now more normal to be disconnected from your spiritual state. And I think because we are all connected, we are all one universal energy, God, spirit, source, universe, whatever you want to call it, we are connected. And I think, neuroscience has taught us a lot about the way the brain works and how largely humanity is operating from a place where we are not actually exercising our free will, our willpower, because we're living out our subconscious based on those past experiences and emotions and beliefs that are more deeply ingrained, and we're not actually using our brain to its fullest capacity to exercise that free will and stay connected to our spiritual side. So I think that maybe that's my thoughts, my reflection on that, and just why it seems like in order to be spiritually connected, it almost feels like it needs to be courageous, because we need to overcome. And our brains, it's not really our fault, because our brains are wired that way. And all done for efficiency's sake so that we can operate very efficiently. But it's taken us away from that spiritual state, and we have to be really aware to get ourselves back there.
That really, that I want to bring it back to the humor thing. And all of a sudden, what's coming in, one of my mentors, Dalak Batangi, he's Paiute Shoshone, and he talks about and brings in this medicine back to the circle, back to the heart. And so when you gather in circle, you create a community, and that lets you know that you're alive. Much like Janine has been saying, you know, when you're doing the thing, you're in it, you know that you're alive, you're experiencing that from within. And so it's interesting where we can also see a lot of indigenous teachings are in every single thing that we're talking about as well. We're talking about the body, the consciousness, and all these things. And when we're talking about what we can do from with the wisdom of the past is take that wisdom of, well, how do we come into this circle like we are right now? How do we come into this space and raise this level of conversation so that it has access to everyone in that way and experience? And so I think that we're doing a really good job of that. It's beautiful. But yes, back to the humor part. Now that I'm like totally just, this is humorous that we're all, okay, over here.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. First, I just want to tell everybody my internet just went down. It obviously took quite a while for me to get back. But I want to give a quick example of how I use humor when I talk with people. I was recently speaking with a couple, and the energy was getting kind of tense. So one way I use humor is attempting, doesn't always work, but attempting to kind of lighten up the energy. So they were talking about their children, and their children are adults, and they referred to them as kids. And they said, we talk to our kids and our kids this and our kids that. So I said, well, when you talk to your kids and they answer you, do they go, bah? And they immediately laughed, and it just changed the whole energy of the conversation. And I also asked for permission to say something that would be humorous. I didn't want to come across as being disrespectful.
Yeah, I think humor is actually kind of can be used as a really effective weapon to disarm people's sort of barriers that they put up to barriers to connection, essentially. And in my role, it's really useful because a lot of people, they see me in my orange robes, and they think, okay, I'm immediately typecast probably in many people's minds as, okay, here's this guy who thinks he takes himself very seriously, and he thinks he knows everything, and he's going to tell me how to live my life, and try and eat my brain or whatever it is. So what I found is that using humor, and it's even in my brand, the Monk Dude, it's a kind of funny brand, it removes that barrier really effectively. And humor, I just came across a talk I'd given quite a long time ago at a company, and it was kind of a big deal because it was the second time I'd spoken at that company, and it's a very big company. So I was a little bit nervous. So I just started off the talk, and I asked them, I spoke here a couple of years ago, and I was curious, how many of you were here then? And a few of them raised their hands, and I said, I'm glad you came back because everything I said last time was wrong. And then, of course, you get a laugh, and it's great to have a joke at the beginning that is pretty sure to get a laugh, because then everything becomes easy, like you said, Alan.
And you know what? I think humor can be used to make you more courageous. I once dressed up as a warrior at one of my events, and I thought, oh my God, here I am, 55 years old, completely dressed up with a sword. Like, this is insane. Like, people are going to think I'm crazy. So I thought, well, I'm going to create like a deep impact on people, or I'm going to make them laugh. And tried to be okay with it. It gave me that courage because I was trying to be spiritual, but I thought I might miss the, the target here. And then we'll make fun with it. We'll have fun with it. So it helped me more courageous to do something that was really outside my comfort zone.
It's also
So
good to
it
use.
creates this. Oh,
You go ahead.
I think it relates this or creates this level of like relatability, right? It sort of like breaks down that barrier of, I'm just like you, I'm going through my own spiritual journey. I don't have all of the answers. Just because I practice spirituality doesn't mean it's like the end all be all here. Like, I really do believe that we're students for life. And I'm very like quirky and silly in my own life. And I think I kind of hid that for a little while because I just felt like, okay, I need to, come across as professional. I've got my poop in a group, like, but yeah, I mean, that's boring, right? We want to show our uniqueness. We want to be able to have some fun. And I think it just brings that lightness to the energy field. It loosens things up. It loosens everybody else up. And, as soon as you get that laugh, it's like you can see everyone's shoulders just sort of relax a little bit, right? And they're reminded that, we're all in this together. So, so I think humor is a beautiful way to just bring people together.
I just recognize the humanness in everyone.
People don't want us to be all professional and formal. They want us to be real.
Yeah.
And authenticity is like there's a huge need and desire for it. And if you can just, I love what you said about that, Alli. And the other way I use humor as a kind of a weapon is against myself, because it helps me to get perspective on how crazy and stupid I am sometimes. And that's kind of a good self-awareness perspective. And if you make fun of yourself a little bit, not too harshly probably, but in front of an audience, they like it.
Yeah, and it helps you push the boundaries a little bit more. Like I remember I said, okay, I'm going to learn to meditate. So I go up on top of this hill here in Calgary, and I remember texting with my friend going, well, there's ladybugs there. Like, doing these funny pictures, because it was really kind of an uncomfortable thing for me to do at the time. It was a little bit weird. And here I am, so I thought, well, I'm going to use humor to help me push through. And that helped me.
That's like you can share those parts where maybe you're feeling very vulnerable, very extremely human, and just share it in a lighter way that people are going to, be able to connect with you. It's not as judgmental coming from that light, humorous space. And then people really feel like, okay, this person's being real, they're being authentic, vulnerable, and sharing those things that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise been comfortable sharing about themselves too, but now they see, it's okay. We're all in this together.
Oh my gosh, I love this, and it reminds me of, I don't know if any of you guys have played this in your maybe younger days, but the Never Have I Ever game, where you put 5 fingers up and you're like, you take one down if you've done it, but you're supposed to say something you've never done. And I like that in a way when we're in group settings in kind of like the spiritual context, because it's kind of like, well, we've all had a spiritual experience getting to this podcast. And part of that, I go, okay, so how many of us prepared their face today? I plucked my eyebrows. How many people plucked their eyebrows, right? Like these little human things, right? Okay, great, we're preparing. Okay, and now I'm like, okay, this is a spiritual experience because I'm going through this stuff, right? And then the stories that come through with that. And we're like, oh, I have to do the thing the right way or whatever. And I love doing that game of like, okay, when do we need, do we need to all play this game until we get it out of into our comfort zone a little better, like to where we're human, and your spiritual journey is this? Well, that's great. This is what I'm doing. And this is what I did this morning, I just love to be able to do that. And it brings in this, it brings in this interesting piece where kind of I asked that question, what does courageous spirituality look like? And that kind of, the original question, I modified it, was what does courageous love look like? And I was like, wait, that's not the right question. Wait, what does courageous spirituality look like? Because we've already defined this is connected. And now when we witness like something very difficult for our spiritual understanding, like what we allow our spiritual existence to be, how can we use that humor in our life? Like, how can we wake up to that moment? So what are examples, like how I'm saying, to get me ready to go on camera and things, I often have to be, I'm human, and like, okay, the lighting may not be perfect or whatever. I might trip as I fall in, as I come in the door, I might disconnect the internet. Who knows what's going to happen? And I just kind of think, I'm just going to go ahead and give all this whole thing up to whatever, and I'm just going to show up as a human. That's my process, right? So what is that process for humanizing and with humor, your process of showing up so that you can be in the moment of spirituality and be able to witness other people's moments of spirituality? That's a big question.
Just remember you're human. It's like, it is what it is, It's, this is a great experience here, and I'm enjoying this. And y'all have a sense of humor that I just love all of you. Thank you.
I have a good story about one time. I actually teach fitness online on Zoom, and one time I was teaching a class and I was full on. I was doing skaters, like side to side lateral movement, and out went the rug. And now some people, the people in my class were like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" I couldn't not laugh at myself. And in fact, I took that and I turned it into a TikTok because I'm like, this is hilarious. Like, wipe out, like lots of other people so embarrassed and they'd hide that away. But I'm like, you know what? This was funny. I don't know, we're human, like crazy things happen. And if you try and hide them away, that's where that guilt and the shame and the embarrassment, and it piles on and it's yucky and you can't let your light shine through that. But if you just put it out there and just let it be what it was, man, like there's just so much opportunity to let your light shine, and that invites others to let their light shine too.
We need one more story for that. Yes. What is another, when we go into perform, and the context for this, as I'm listening right now, is when another person who is showing up to life and they are about to have a moment, right, that's going to help define who they are or expand their experience. How can they take a tool of humor and bring it in? So like you just explained, I turned that into a TikTok because actually sliding on the rug, wipe out, that's super funny. So how else could we give that context? Because there is that little bit of like, well, how do I get across the aisle? How do I bridge that gap? How do I bring you into this conversation? When you're ready, of course, because we've established that we're not here to tell people how to exist. We're here to share our own existence so that we can help give or deepen the marrow, or so to speak, of everyone's existence.
I think also being, open and receiving when someone else is going through a situation like that, right? So when they're maybe expressing their vulnerabilities, or they have that humorous moment where the rug is ripped out from underneath of them, that we are, laughing with them, not at them, so to speak, right? That we're really providing this level of like acceptance and creating that non-judgmental atmosphere so that those other people can feel really comfortable sharing the nitty-gritty of what they're going through, and to give them permission to also laugh at themselves along the way. And I think like modeling has been a really big theme of today too, is actually following up with that inspired action. So it's one thing for us to show up that way, but then again, also give others permission to do the same and really be accepting and receiving of their experience, however that happens to show up while we're with them.
Yeah, and I think if you live life thinking everything in life is wonderful or a great story.
There's humor is sometimes used in therapy This is a little bit of an unusual one, but there's a true story of a method used by a psychologist who helped people overcome phobias. And there was one woman who had a tremendous phobia of spiders. I'm scared of spiders for sure, especially if they're bigger than necessary to kill a fly. But he was terrified particularly of, tarantulas or whatever. And he would actually, he gradually worked it through, and he would get her to imagine the spider wearing a funny hat and doing a dance and like do that again and again. And it really helped. It kind of, got it in. I think it's about perspective. It just sort of, so I'm not suggesting that if you're going to speak in front of a crowd, imagine them all as spiders wearing a funny hat. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not quite sure how it works in that context.
I like that in a way. It's almost like we're in a Defense Against the Dark Arts class in Harry Potter, and we're like, ridiculous kind of a thing, and we cast our spell on ourselves. Like, how could we turn ourselves in? Yeah, I like that. Janine, did you want to share anything about humor in bringing this in, or Alan?
Well, if we're talking about how humor is used, I can give an example of how Bob Newhart did that. He did a video, and he was, playing the part of a counselor, and the person who came to see him was afraid whenever they would think about death, they would picture themselves being in a coffin, and they would get very afraid. And he said, "Oh, doctor, I'm so every time it's haunting me. So could you please help me?" So Bob Newhart says, "Sure, I can help you." She says, "Oh, doctor, please tell me, what do I need to know?" So he just stares right in her face and says, "Stop it." She goes, "What?" I said, "Stop it." Really, the message there is you're doing it to yourself. The key is just to stop it. Now, the woman, of course, did not laugh, but it was a funny presentation of making an important point.
One of the most effective uses of humor I've seen on stage was a very simple story. And I'm trying to remember his surname. His name is Guy something. He's a really great psychologist, a relationship psychologist. He and his wife both, so that's a good sign. They've been married all their lives. So he was on stage speaking at a conference, and he's talking about a client. Obviously, he can't name the client, but he's talking about this client who'd come to him, and this guy had 14 failed relationships in 15 years. And he was explaining this and saying, and he said, this guy finally gets to the point, he says to me, after telling about all these relationships, he says, "Do you think it's something to do with me?" And the whole audience. And the timing was important. I mean, he did it so perfectly. I've seldom laughed so much. It was so sort of this moment of dawning self-awareness after 14 years. So sometimes something simple, which is, it's, of course, he's making fun of us all. It's kind of getting us to laugh at ourselves in a way, I think, because we all do that, right?
It's so important not to take ourselves too seriously.
It's that other person, they're all bad.
Yeah, I love humor. I think it's so powerful. Like you can make a point and people will take it and eat it, but if when you use humor, and if you just said it, they would shut you off. That'd be the end of it. But if you use humor to get that point across that they're being silly, all of a sudden it becomes like, oh my God.
I tell you, it's a weapon.
It's powerful.
Guard,
Yeah, totally.
I would like to add a little bit different perspective on this. I think humor is fantastic. I love it. And but something that we have each been given that we can use anytime we want is laughter. And laughter is a super powerful thing that changes our brain. And we don't need humor for that. We don't need an outside source to bring it into us. And whenever we want to change a situation, simply start laughing. And if you laugh for 10 minutes, belly laugh, 10 minutes in a day, it equals working out on a rowing machine for 1 hour. And that's from a physical and neurological perspective. So stop with the big 1 hour workouts on the rowing machine and just laugh for 10 minutes from the belly. And it impacts, laugh is so powerful because it impacts everybody around you. And if you don't believe that, simply listen to an infant or a young child laugh from the belly. And you're just drawn right into it and you begin to laugh as well. Laughter is powerful, and it's a tool and a gift that we've been given. And so I really encourage us to use it with people around us and change how they're feeling simply by laughing out loud.
And just as a real quick follow-up, Janine, to what you just said, there's actually a yoga practice. It's called laughter yoga. And what people do is they assume certain poses, but nothing really strenuous, and just keep laughing. I agree with you. It's highly therapeutic.
Laughing and humor is human. We all need it, right? Matthew, do you have something to add?
Oh, I just love this. Yeah, I mean, like as you bring up this laughter of a child, it just reminded me, brought me to this moment when I was a kid, when I got to be an uncle for the first time. So I want to say I was 12 or 13, I forget exactly now. Don't tell my nephew. He loved monkey noises. And so I'm like, this person who's going into their teenage years going, who am I? Can I act silly? I got to fit in and do all these things about a teenager, the psychosis of a teenager. And I'm sitting here being like a chimpanzee in front of him, and he's this 4-month-old kid that is just barely looking around and doing and trying to interact, and he can't help but laugh. He just thinks it's hilarious every time I go, ooh, and for me, it's not that, it's like, oh, I'm just being silly and playing. But kids, again, they have that medicine. I just love that. And as I re-witness that and experience that, I'm like, just witnessing that was medicine for me, because if the mirror neurons and things, it turns something within you to also have that same experience. So I feel it's beautiful that we're all having this conversation, because we understand in some contexts, and we can bring language to what a spiritual existence is from all these different walks of life. And we have witnessed others who maybe have not had that spiritual existence or have not woken up to being able to navigate that yet. And so we feel it in us, right? We feel parts of us that are like closed off. And so we want to be able to reach out and we want to do something. So that's an internal motivation for us to be a certain way in the world. Again, through modeling behavior, right? How do I bridge that gap? Instead of having that conversation that shuts somebody down, how do I have that conversation that invites them in so that we can come to understanding that love again, right? Janine, you quoted and gave us the definition of what love is. And I love that definition of what love is. Screw the Webster's dictionaries. I don't care what that says. I love what you've just brought to us, because as I was listening to this and as I'm like digesting everything, I feel like I just had this 2-hour healing around whatever I didn't even know I needed to have, right? That I'm sitting here in this space of transformation, and now I'm like, wow, from all of you, I have a much better connection to the rest of the world around me. I can go up to somebody who doesn't have the same perspective that I do. And I love that. Like, for a while, I will say that I had a little bit of upset in the religious community as well because of certain areas. And I was yearning to see that person who was actually living that truth, the actual, like, this is how I can model this. And I'm outside of being angry at the rest of the world and whatnot. And I would say that I've met probably maybe less than 100 people that I could say prescribed specifically to that. And that's an egoic statement. And I totally understand that because we were all in our experiences as we just went through. And I look at that and I go, wow, that was interesting medicine for me to witness. So the fact that I was yearning to have that conversation with people that I felt were out of alignment is powerful, because who's wrong? Maybe it's just me, right? Bringing it just like into that space of how can I shift so that I can open up to what a greater definition of spirituality is. So I love that. That's all I got to say. I don't know. This has been just great. I'm so invigorated. I feel like I'm not going to sleep for like 3 days. Just this is exciting. I just love it. The energy coming in. It's beautiful. Yeah. Yes. So Julie, did you want to say any words as well, or?
I think we're probably at a point, if anybody wants to add anything so we can close this. If you have any master classes, classes going on, specials, invitations you want to extend to our audience, please do so. And we're going to direct everyone to our website, whatthebleep.xyz, and they can find all of your information in your bios to get a hold of you if they feel connected to do so. And I just want to thank everyone for participating. This has been a wonderful experience with all your diverse stories. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I've got a special I'd love to share. Well, yeah, it's pretty special. I have a colleague, a very good friend of mine. He's another monk, and we've developed a course. It's called 99 Days to Transform Your World. And it's a 3-month, as it suggests, a 3-month program. It's once a week live online, and then each day you have a little routine. And the goal is to establish people in a daily practice of meditation, short practice of yoga, and something designed to help them find their life purpose through inspirational experience. So it's very reasonably priced, as usual, ridiculously reasonably priced. So I put the link in the chat there. It's called planetaryleadershiptraining.com/course. So that's launching in 2 weeks. Anyway, that's happening. So what have we got here? The Story of Worry Masterclass. Cool.
Yeah, so I have a masterclass coming up. We start at the end of January here. So we start with discovering your stories, picking the story you're going to perform, what is storytelling all about, practice your story, and then you're going to be on stage. If you can drive to Calgary, that is, and if COVID allows, March 11th. And you get to experience being on a real stage in a real theater in front of people sharing a personal story, which is very scary for some people and very juicy for me to watch.
So just to be clear, your story, the storytelling you teach is for telling it live, right? It's not for writing stories so much.
Yeah, it's performing, actual storytelling. So true stories that you share with an audience.
Awesome.
You write it first, of course. Well, some do.
Bridget is awesome. You'll love the course.
Thank you, Janine.
Awesome. I have a couple of things coming up on January 22nd. I'm hosting an online workshop. It's called Intentional Living, and it's a spiritual approach to setting intentions and activating your infinite potential. So really kind of walking you through the power of intention and how to really harness that energy. And then I also have a couple of online, or not online, sorry, in-person Reiki training workshops. So if you are in the Edmonton area, then in February, I am hosting a Reiki Level 1 certification program. And in March, we're doing a Level 2. So yeah, if you follow me on Instagram @forthemoms, then you can see all of my links on my link tree there to see if any of those align with you.
I would love to share really briefly too the program that I have that I basically just created in December of 2021. Again, just really feeling empowered to and inspired to reach out and help moms who are stuck and overwhelmed and struggling, maybe with that just a momitis, to help them to bring it back to who they truly are, bring it back to who they were and continue to be. It's not about creating a new self per se, but it is about discovering who they really are underneath all of that and then allowing that light to shine. And that's basically a 12-week one-to-one container coaching, helping them along a self-love and acceptance journey, and just allowing them to break free of that stuckness, to become balanced and confident and go after an aligned life, heart-centered living, and really, up level their entire life, create their happy. So the program is called Create Your Happy. You can check it out there, or absolutely, if you feel called to, please drop me a private message on Facebook or Instagram.
Okay, and two things that I'd just like to mention is if anyone has any questions they would like to ask me, feel free to contact me. I'll be glad to answer your questions. And also, if anyone either knows or is part of any addiction treatment centers, I've developed an e-learning course which complements the treatment. It's not in competition with it. And I'm going to be making that live pretty soon. And now I'm just looking for treatment centers who'd be willing to have that available to their clients.
Wonderful. Janine, did you have any offering that's coming up?
Well, I do. They're just not concrete. But in February, I will be running a 7-week grief recovery workshop. And that will be for a maximum of 10 people. And it could also be for trauma as well. But we're going to focus on loss for this 7 weeks.
Beautiful, beautiful, everybody. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much again. Julie, what else do we got? Do we have on our agenda for closing out tonight?
Well, I just wanted to make a small acknowledgement and thank you to Corey Poirier, if I'm saying it correctly, for connecting some of us together in order to facilitate this and bring us together to do this. We have what is a spiritual awakening coming up on the 22nd of January, which is just a continuation. This is an 8-part series that's going to go through the end of April. So this is just what an awesome panel to start with, and such diversity here to put out there and show, we're all diverse, but hey, we can, respect one another's, views and beliefs and live on this planet together with love. That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
Oh, no, it's beautiful. This is beautiful. Yes. I love this co-creation moment as well. And we have so many offerings coming in through the woodworks. I just say, this is, again, you can view this and stay tuned for the next episode. Just like Julie said, we are diving deeper into all of these things. There's so much in this conversation that we cannot cover within a little over 2 hours. We have to extend it onto more days with more people, because it's just too big for us, little old us, to to do it. We need to be in our community.
We also want to hear, a lot of diverse stories coming through this process. So we made sure that we have different panelists on every webinar that we're doing, so people can really taste the diversity here.
Yes. So everybody, you get a taste of these 6 individuals. We get to taste the next 6 or 7, or it's a little fluctuating depending on how we go. Individuals continuing on, and I guess, this is a living conversation, right? We can see that we are not the end all to this conversation. We're just like a little stepping stone that we're hoping provides a beautiful foundation to continue this conversation in a very proactive and community building way. So there will be opportunities, online to share your story and communicate with other people. And so we encourage, of course, humanistic discourse. So we are all here as humans. Let's do that and be in co-creation to each other. It's a huge thing we're doing. We're co-creating. We're not in competition with one another. We're co-creating this world, right? So yes, there's opportunities on Instagram, Facebook. Please comment on YouTube. There will be today some TikToks going up, just asking you mainly from all of the stuff that we just did. I'm going to be posting a lot of questions. I encourage all of our panelists to also just link or create their own TikToks and talk about what the Bleep spirituality and all this stuff. So that's all I got to say. Yeah, I just love it.
Thank you guys for putting this panel together. What an amazing conversation. I absolutely enjoyed every moment of it. I didn't even want to take a moment away and miss a single thing. So thank you both for putting this together. And thank you to all the panelists for showing up with your unique perspectives.
Yeah, and I just
that was that was really wonderful, and thank you. That was a great experience, and I'm just going to go watch Lord of the Rings now.
And I would just like to express my appreciation for everyone and for everything that each of you have said.
Thanks so much, everybody. Really a pleasure to connect with all of you.
Yes, thank you. It was lovely actually meeting you all, in person. So this was awesome. And I would love to even connect with all of you one-on-one at some point if our lives will allow it, because this has been lovely. I feel like I could just keep chatting forever.
I had a thought as Julie was speaking, is that COVID has been a universal experience, and spirituality also is. And I just want you to thank you guys for opening the door to having the conversation as we exit from something that has been universally negative in many respects and bringing us out into the light. So thank you, and I wish you great things as you continue in this journey. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. It's been a pleasure to meet all of you. God bless.
Thank you. And I would like to thank all our viewers and our future viewers, and we're just going to close this now and say goodbye.
Namaste, everybody. We will namaste you later. We love everybody.
Is this the Brady Bunch?
Right?
Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
So well, bye.